The lights in my barn flickered again, and my prize cow, Bessie, let out an irritated moo. It was the third time this week, and I was about 5 seconds away from taking a sledgehammer to my breaker box. Something was draining my electricity like a parasite, and if I didn't figure it out soon, I'd be out a lot more than just a few frustrated sighs. Then, just as I stepped out onto my porch, I saw it, an orange extension cord, snaking its way from my barn, across the fence, and straight into my neighbor's house. My jaw tightened. That was Karen's house. Karen, the self-appointed queen of the HOA, the woman who had spent the last 2 years harassing me about my unkempt lawn and unapproved farm animals, despite the fact that my property wasn't even under HOA jurisdiction. She was the kind of woman who would take a ruler to measure your grass and issue a fine if it dared to be a millimeter too tall. And now she was stealing my electricity? I clenched my fist. Oh, she had no idea what she had just started. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to stay calm. Storming over and screaming at Karen wouldn't accomplish anything, except maybe earning me a trespassing complaint. No, I needed proof. Cold, undeniable proof. So, I did what any self-respecting farmer with a grudge would do. I grabbed my hunting camera, set it up in the barn, and waited. The next morning, I nearly spit out my coffee when I checked the footage. There she was, in her overpriced yoga pants and ridiculous bedazzled live, laugh, love hoodie, sneaking onto my property in the dead of night, dragging her cursed extension cord across my land like a burglar with an electrical fetish. The audacity, the sheer, unfiltered nerve of this woman. And the best part? She had the gall to check her surroundings like some kind of master thief before plugging her cord in, completely oblivious to the camera recording her every move. My hands twitched with the urge to confront her right that second, but then a much better idea formed in my mind. She loved HOA rules so much? Fine. I'd give her the worst HOA nightmare of her life. But first, I needed to see just how much power she was stealing. I spent the rest of the day running tests, turning things on and off in my barn, and watching the meter. Sure enough, my readings spiked every time I turned off my own power, because Karen's house was still running strong. Her entire home, air conditioning, security lights, her obnoxious glowing flamingo lawn ornaments, was running on my farm's power. By the time the sun set, my plan was already coming together. It was simple, really. Karen believed in the almighty HOA, the bureaucratic overlords she worshipped like a religion. If I wanted to hit her where it hurt, I needed to play her game, but with my own rules. I spent the next few days crafting the most terrifying, official-looking HOA letter imaginable. Dear homeowner, it has come to our attention that unauthorized power consumption has been detected in your residence. Under the Farm Utility Homeowners Association, HOA, Guidelines, Section 12.5, Subsection B, all non-compliant electricity use is subject to immediate penalties. Current assessed fees, $10,000. Failure to remit payment within 14 days will result in additional penalties, including but not limited to power disconnection, lien placement on your property, legal action under the HOA Compliance Act. Please make immediate payment to the Farm Utility Homeowners Association to avoid further consequences. Sincerely, HOA Compliance Office. I sat back, grinning at my handiwork. It was perfect. Karen would take one look at this and absolutely lose her mind. To make it even more official, I had my buddy Tim, who used to work in a law office, format the document with all the proper legal nonsense. I even got a custom envelope printed with a big, bold, final notice stamp in red. The next morning, I watched from my porch as the delivery guy dropped it off at Karen's doorstep. She stepped outside in her usual Karen uniform, a gaudy floral robe, fuzzy slippers, and an expression of constant judgment. The second she saw the letter, her face scrunched up like she had just smelled rotten milk. I took a long sip of my coffee, savoring the moment. Then it happened. Karen opened the letter. Her eyes darted across the page. Her face drained of color. Her jaw dropped. And then, just as I predicted, she let out a shriek so loud it sent a flock of birds scattering from the trees. I nearly choked on my coffee trying not to laugh. Karen scrambled inside, clutching the letter like it was a court summons. Within minutes, I heard the sound of furious typing. She was probably drafting an angry email to my fake HOA customer service. I leaned back in my chair, letting the satisfaction settle in. This was going to be fun. The moment Karen opened that letter, I knew I had her right where I wanted. From my porch, I watched as she stormed inside, clutching the paper like it was a lawsuit. The curtains in her living room twitched as she peeked out, probably scanning the neighborhood to see if anyone else had received a similar notice. It was almost too perfect. She had spent years terrorizing everyone with HOA rules and nonsense violations, but now the tables had turned. And she had no idea she was playing a game she could never win. I could only imagine what was going through her mind. Karen loved the HOA more than she loved her own family, probably. The idea that she had somehow violated a rule she didn't know existed must have been gnawing at her soul. She couldn't call the HOA to complain, because, as far as she knew, this was the HOA. She also couldn't just ignore it. Ignoring HOA notices was a sin in her book, punishable by extreme panic and frantic phone calls. Sure enough, within 10 minutes, my phone buzzed with a call from an unknown number. I let it ring. Karen didn't leave a voicemail, which meant she was either too panicked to think straight or already working on Plan B. I glanced back at her house and saw her pacing on her front lawn, phone in one hand, letter in the other, her expression a mixture of outrage and pure, unfiltered fear. She was unraveling, and it was a beautiful sight. A few hours passed before I saw the next phase of her meltdown. Her husband, Greg, a quiet man who usually tried his best to avoid the drama, had been dragged into the mess. I spotted him standing on the porch, reading the letter while Karen jabbered at him, her arms flailing wildly. Greg scratched his head, muttered something, and went back inside, clearly uninterested in fighting whatever imaginary HOA battle his wife was waging. Karen, however, was not one to back down. I heard the unmistakable sound of her printer running at full speed. Papers flew out as she printed whatever nonsense she thought would help her case. Then, like a soldier preparing for war, she gathered a group of fellow HOA devotees. Neighbors who, for some reason, still listened to her despite secretly hating her constant complaints. An hour later, a small army of middle-aged warriors stood at my gate. Karen was leading them, naturally, holding the letter high like a scroll of divine scripture. I stepped outside, leaning against my porch railing. "Afternoon, Karen," I said, playing dumb. "Something wrong?" Her face twisted in frustration. "Jake," she snapped, shoving the letter toward me. "Do you have any idea what this is?" I took my time pretending to read it, nodding along as if I had never seen it before. "Looks like a power bill," I said, scratching my chin. "Steep one, too." Karen's eye twitched. "This is an outrageous, completely fraudulent charge. This HOA doesn't even exist." I raised an eyebrow. "Of course it exists. It says so right there on the letter." Karen's loyal followers exchanged nervous glances. HOA rules were their Bible, and if Karen was losing faith in one, it put them in a very uncomfortable position. One of them, a lady named Patricia, shifted uncomfortably. "I mean, if it's an official notice." Karen whipped around, glaring at Patricia so hard the woman actually took a step back. "It's not official. It's a scam. Some idiot is trying to con me out of $10,000. I feigned concern. "That's awful, Karen. Really. But, just a thought, why did you get this notice in the first place?" Karen stiffened. "I don't know." I smiled. "Didn't plug into someone else's electricity, did you?" The color drained from her face for just a moment before she recovered, puffing herself up like an angry peacock. "That is a ridiculous accusation. I would never." Before she could finish, I pulled my phone from my pocket and tapped the screen. The hidden camera footage played, showing her sneaking onto my farm, plugging in that ridiculous